Good morning. I find that scripture very interesting on a couple of levels. There's different versions of that, and in the what do they call it? Today's English version, Good News Bible, it said he has made from one man every race of men that dwell on the earth. It puts us all on an equal playing field, doesn't it? In the light of racism, in the light of those who feel that perhaps they're different enough that they don't like or superior in some way that they look down on, the basis of racism certainly is not wrought from the scriptures if we take that as an indication of how God feels about humankind, and not just feels, but how it all started. We're going to talk about the three philosophies, I'm going to call them, of origins. You know, as a young boy growing up, I didn't give origins a lot of thought. My thoughts were steeped in the Post-Standard newspaper, WOLF AM radio station. Sorry, kids, you probably cannot relate to any of this. Whatever movie was on TV or at the theater. Books, I didn't really read much, any nonfiction. I enjoyed what limited reading I did do. It was nonfiction. But our discussion and friends and everything that in my petri dish, if you want to call it that, this big, huge, round ball that you shake up with the snow inside, that was my domain in Mattydale growing up. And never really was there any discussion on origins, really never really a discussion on God. I went to St. Margaret's Church. I was baptized there as a baby, I guess. And there you have it. You live a pretty secular, quote-unquote, normal life, and my upbringing was fine. It was great. The friends I hung out with, great. We had a great time. Nothing, out of the ordinary. We didn't do anything deviant or weird or anything. We acted weird, but we didn't, we didn't get anything that was terrible, or anything like that, just because we weren't, all church-going people. But the problem is that I became so used to that, I didn't think there was anything other than that. And to deviate outside of that, I'd seen some people or demonstrated what Christianity was, and it was it didn't really turn me on at all, And I ask myself the question now, when did I conclude where I came from? Well, because there was no discussion and no challenge at church, at school, or at home, or among friends, you got to understand that I learned, in earth science class, and, that there was such thing as dinosaurs, 6th grade, 7th, 8th grade, that we came from monkey-like creatures, and everything evolved, and the earth is 4+ billion years old. There was no challenging that. There wasn't even any discussion on it. So you could say that I was a mixture of a little bit Catholic, a little bit agnostic, a little agnostic, a little evolutionist, I guess. But I was very ignorant of anything outside of that. I had no other information. There are three theories, really, that there's more than that, but you get into some of the other Eastern philosophies and it becomes really far out there. But there's three theories, and why don't you go ahead and throw up the first slide here, please. Apes, aliens, or Adam. And I'm going to go through each one and explain what it means so that you have an idea of what is out there. Because you're going to come across people that have belief in these three. Okay? And I just wanted to kind of give you a preview as to what those are. It's going to be a little bit of a fun ride here today, so buckle up and let's go. Go ahead and throw up the next one. We're going to deal with chariots of the gods. I'm going to come back to that one. Why don't we do the next slide? So the theory of evolution states that approximately 3 million years ago, we had some kind of common ancestors that were all in various states of evolution. There's usually one tree, but there's a lot of branches. And when you see the tree, it gets really complicated as they're trying to figure out the formation of the skull, how deep it was, what they feel the assigned time is for it. And it gets kind of weird, like a tree that with branches that are just, But to simplify the whole theory, it's the idea of that through environmental pressure, and all that means is that the environment kind of helps dictate what's going to happen next genetically, and positive mutation, which there are really no examples of that, through a lot of micro changes, you then get over a long period of time a macro change. So the bird becomes the lizard that becomes, or the lizard becomes the bird that becomes, the swan. In 1984, they came up with a theory called the out of Africa theory. And what it did was it evened the playing field so that racism couldn't really be looked upon as the cause of any kind of philosophical deficiency or ideology, that some have blamed some of the despots that have done things through the years. At least, let me put it this way, that evolutionary theory of survival of the fittest of the favored races, which is the title of Darwin's book, if you read the entire title, we're going to take away that stigma from evolution. And what they did was this. Up until that time, you had different monkey men type races in various degrees of development throughout the earth. Those all died, from Neanderthal to Homo habilis to Homo erectus to everyone, they all died. And 200,000 years ago, out of Africa, finally came the human race. Like the Bible says, out of one man came the races of the earth. In 1984, they began to develop that idea, which evens the playing field because all of those other evolutionary processes, according to scientists, in various states of development. Do you see what I'm getting at? Some are more developed than others. Some are going to be superior than others. They wipe it all out, and then they only give a very short time frame of 200,000 years. So there's not really a lot of time for a variation that's going to go too much to where one race is so far advanced and this race is not so advanced. It's a very short period of time. It's very convenient. And so out of that comes the races of the people, and they start populating throughout the earth. And approximately 15,000 years ago, they came over the Siberian, bridge there in Alaska, came down the coast, and then populated some of the United States, North America, and South America. That's how the theory goes. Okay. Go ahead, next slide. Oh, let's go ahead and go back to the. Let's go back to the slide previous. Thank you. The aliens theory, and we'll show Mr. Alien in just a second again. Eric von Daniken, back in the late 60s, wrote this book, I believe it came out in 68 or 69, called Chariots to the Gods. They made a documentary in the early 70s. It was an independent film, and it hit the theater, and it did really well for a documentary. Now, we're talking 1974, and it grossed like $25 million. And back then, that was a lot of box office. Okay, they did extremely well with it. He used that hour-and-a-half film as a way of propagating another theory on our origins. And go ahead and show us our little buddy there from outer space. The idea is this, and here's the reason why he came up with this idea. You see, with evolution, you start 3 billion years ago with rained-on rocks, and then it just all of a sudden something appears that they're not sure if it came from space in the form of a seed or if RNA or even something even below that started to form, and then it became more comprehensive and more developed. But the problem is that you kind of you're still on this now. You got to understand, Evolution doesn't say that you go from small to large. It just happens to be that way. Evolution doesn't say you go from dumb to smart. It just happens to be that way. It's like nailing jelly to a wall, truthfully. It's just change over time. That's what it is, okay? But what we're seeing here is typically larger, more intelligent, more developed as you go on, but not necessarily entirely. So von Däniken comes along and says, wait a minute. There are certain artifacts and buildings and stones that are so highly advanced that you're trying to tell me from this monkey to man scenario that 5,000 years ago, where we're barely got our feet out of the Stone Age, where we may or may not even have the wheel, that they were able to move a 1,200-ton rock, fashion it out as a rectangle, size of a school bus, 69 feet long by 12 by 15 feet, of limestone, pick it up out of the quarry, run it over here to this temple, raise it up 15 feet, and set it down to where it's nice and level. You're going to tell me that people 5,000 years ago did that with the current prevailing theory? You're going to tell me that they built the pyramids with just rollers and stone and copper tools? Do you know, if you get on YouTube and look up machined Egyptian stones, you will see blade marks and drill holes, and they can tell how big the blade was that they used. Okay, let's just say they created a 6-foot blade to cut these rocks. What powered it? We have no evidence from the tombs. Matter of fact, we have just the opposite. We have slaves with rollers and ropes. But when we look at the cuts that are made, you can see the striations. When you look at the hole that's been put through a stone, it's perfect, and you can see the drill marks where there's been some kind of mechanism that has drilled perfectly straight through. You do not create a hole this big around that through the rock that with a chisel and cloth with some sand on it. You just don't. So von Däniken, and this is before the internet, so nobody knew really that this stuff existed as far as the common person. He assembles all these more technologically, high technology, advanced, objects, buildings and little mechanisms that they found in the water, and pieces it together in documentary and says, I know how it was done. Something had to come into our petri dish and give us that advantage. And this was during the beginning, mid-stage of the alien interest since 1947, 48. It's been there, and more and more people were becoming more aware that there might be something out there, and we may have been visited. So he just postulized, is that the word? Postulate? Hypothesized that those aliens, here's the theory, came to Earth 35,000 years ago and genetically enhanced the Cro-Magnon man, or the Neanderthal. So what birthed out of that union were Homo sapiens sapien, if you want to get scientifically technical. Then every few thousand years they came and they would see how they were doing, assist them anymore if they needed to. And then about 5,000 years ago they gave them technology, which they utilized to build these fantastic buildings. And that is the alien theory. So we got apes, aliens, okay? And then our next slide. Then we have Adam. Now, whenever I get on these chat rooms and we talk about these things, usually the alien theory doesn't come up too much. That's not usually it's a minority of people. You'd be surprised how many people believe it, but it's a minority. And I have to admit, von Däniken did a very interesting thing by suggesting an intelligence involved in boosting humanity, because evolutionary anthropology, archaeology, paleoanthropology doesn't really have a great answer for what looks to be somewhat of an advanced race where they shouldn't be in their timeline. So he called into question but provided an evolutionary answer, a response, in the form of aliens. When you get to Adam as the solution to the origins question, or you visit that, when I'm on these chat rooms, it's usually an evolution creation debate. There's no alien. And by the way, for those of you that know what old Earth creationism is, it's the idea that, either humankind or the Earth has been around for millions and billions of years, and that God evolved people over time, but God did create, and he superintended, or he wound it up and did this for all this time. And there are people who are Christians that believe in long periods of time, but do believe in some form of creationism with a smattering of evolution. And quite honestly, it really never registers above noticeability because nobody really cares. It's not controversial enough, it's not fantastic enough, perhaps it's not the truth, and that's the reason why maybe it's kind of wishy-washy because it's amalgamating between the two philosophies that makes it kind of almost like, compromise, get out of here. I don't know. It just never does, though. So what you're left with is 4 billion years, 3 billion years, life shows up. 3 million years ago, monkey starts to become, monkey-like creature becomes man, versus the young earth creationist, which states that you believe that Genesis is literal, ha ha ha, the evolutionists say, that's historical, ha ha ha, and that Adam was created, say 6,000 years ago. Life on earth was created 6,000 years ago. And they say that's fairy tale. Those are fairy tales that you're believing in, and you're just going to stunt the advancement of humankind and science if you continue with those thoughts and if you propagate those thoughts. That's the criticism. Now, people believe that if you do not believe in the ape theory, let's just say, that you're going to damage the cause, children, science, all of that as a result of that. That's interesting. Young earth creationists face a problem because it does sound fantastic. All three of them can be looked upon as fairy tales. Think about it for a second. RNA 3 billion years ago to what we're doing here right now. You think that's not fantastic? You think that's not a fairy tale? Aliens coming down and advancing our race genetically? You don't think that sounds crazy? How about 6,000 years ago, an unseen God comes down and creates this world and blows energy into his first pair of our parents 6,000 years ago? You don't think that sounds fantastic, and then makes them out of mud? They're all fantastic. It's a question of which one you want to believe in. Really, that's what it boils down to. Which one are you going to believe in? The really cool thing, and I have to make a plug for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I wasn't an Adventist all my life, so it's not like I'm fourth-generation card-carrying or I'm just sort of beating my chest saying, I'm an Adventist and proud of it. It has nothing to do with that. What it does, though, is it allows me to be able to appreciate some of the nuances that this religion has offered in regards to filling in the blanks. And I love that, meaning that when it comes to, Adam and, excuse me one second. I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, the nuances, the things that have been filled in. And I'm trying to think, like the robe of light. We talked about that during the children's story. Everybody else, looks at Adam and Eve as naked in the garden with a lion in front of Adam. The picture. And yet, when you piece it together, even from the Bible, there's evidence that they had a covering of light. That's a cool detail. That, to me, speaks to my intellect. That makes sense. That's the reason why they weren't ashamed. And here is the answer to von Daniken. Eric von Daniken, who's a Swede or from the Netherlands, he's from over in the upper European. I would say, Mr. von Daniken, it is true. There seems to be an advanced race 5,000 years ago. But that advanced race was our former parents, grandparents, great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. I watched a documentary from 1976 that was done, was a docudrama of Genesis, Adam and Eve and the kids. And when they were trying to barter with one another, Cain and Abel, they had these like caveman boots on, and one wanted a fish and one wanted an extra pair of caveman boots, and they're doing this. This is Christians, right? As opposed to the way I understand it, through what this church has, the resources that it has, that Adam was more than twice as tall as humans today, and highly, highly intelligent, which makes sense because even if the church was making some kind of weird claim, it's not beyond the possibility of reason. If you think about it for a second, you have two people who are fresh off the creation boat, so to speak. Brand new. Genetically, what does that look like? On top of that, if we're going to get into intelligence, we still see these savants that we call idiot savants. I don't know why. We see these savants who may not have capacity in one area, but can smell shapes, and that's synesthesia or whatever. When the doctors and the nurses are walking by, they know exactly who it is based on their steps. They know what day of the week it was in 1919, October 3rd. They take prime numbers and they start playing with 13 digits and they have fun with it, throwing them back and forth between these two that were just loving it. And perfect recall. And be able to hear a tune and play it perfectly and not having any formal training and not being very intelligent with everything else. It tells me that if you collectively put all those talents together, and if that's any indication, and this is my hypothesis, any indication of what the brain was before the flood, before as Adam and Eve were created originally, it tells me that they were highly intelligent. It tells me when they got off the boat and started to repopulate the earth, there was still, and again, I'm guessing, the genetics were still pretty good, and they were highly intelligent. And if they were still tall, which I believe they were, then that means they were pretty darn strong. So you've got genius giants running around creating all these megalithic structures. But it's funny, when you see the structures and then you see the races of people that come afterwards, they're filling in or they're trying to restore what these people, these originators, the people who originally built these massive structures, their architecture is bad. Small rocks, haphazardly put together. It's remarkable, especially when you go to Peru and you see the original rocks and then you see the Incas, what they did afterwards. It's crude compared to the original rocks. These rocks look like they've been cut with a laser beam. They are so tightly fit together. And the way they've shapen the fronts of them, it's like they were soft at one time, and they fashioned them the way they needed them and then let them harden. I don't know what that all means, but that's what it looks like. Every single megalithic structure throughout the world, if you ask the indigenous people who built them, they will tell you every single time without exception that it was a race that wasn't them, that was before them, that were giants. Every single one of them. From the temple of Baalbek and those stones to the Incas all over the world, giants were the ones that were involved in the building of these buildings. Fits pretty nicely with this idea that coming off the ark, there were people who were highly intelligent, I don't know how much stronger than we are today, and very capable and very tall. So those were the people that were building these things. Fits nicely into that theory. Real quick announcement before we close. This idea of, and go ahead and throw up the last slide there, Lisa. It brings us back to this: apes, aliens, or Adam. In 2005, I announced at Dexterville that we were going to open up this little creation museum. Here it is 15 years later. And we're opening it up starting this Sunday. It is not going to be open in the sense that you're going to walk inside. We realize that logistically that's not going to be possible. This is only recent right here. And this is the thing that we're using to talk to those people in Mattydale that are in a petri dish that are thinking secular thoughts and haven't thought about the origins question, or maybe never gave it much thought, like myself, and try to instigate a thought again. compare and contrast. So what we have at the museum is going to be a display window right next to my real estate office. And in there, brightly lit with LED lights, is going to be one display with many things in it, a theme. And then we're going to, on our website and YouTube and everything, complement it with more information so that even when you show up at the front, if one does, you'll be able to see it for yourself, whatever it is. And we just acquired yesterday a real mastodon tooth with its roots, which I guess is very rare. And we're going to be restoring it and then putting that in the window here in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be pretty cool. We were watching Shark Tank, and we saw this acrylic tray about this big with suction cups, and you just stick it on a window and you can type away. And I thought, that is cool. We bought two. So we've got these acrylic trays that are attached to our window on the inside. And these LEDs, man, are they the bomb these days? We've got these bars of LED lights that are like so powerful. So if you want to go there at 3 in the morning, you got nothing else going on, you're not being able to get to sleep, stop on by and take a look and see what's in there. So, apes, aliens, or Adam? Those of you who are out there, and hello everybody out there, sorry for not recognizing you on Facebook. Those of you who are watching that may have just a curiosity with this and have really not explored it, we encourage you to do that. We encourage you to do that today. I guess that's it. So thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.